It certainly gained traction.
The textile industry in Leicester has been under investigation.
A world surrounded by image, advertising, marketing, one-day delivery, product placement, gadgets and fast fashion. We are supposedly shallow, obsessed with the self, narcissistic and vain. Building personal castles of consumption on the foundations of things we don't really need.
Exactly.
But is this true?
What?
In some sense, of course, we've always consumed. And while we now do consume the latest frivolous fashion and want the latest pointless gadget, we also consume meaningful things, new foods and books, travel and art.
So consumerism is a broad and a vague concept. From the Latin consumer, it used to mean to use up and was limited to things like candles, food, drink and wood. Things that you would literally consume would disappear. But it's obvious that throughout the modern period, and increasingly from the 1950s, something new has happened.
What is
a
that?
Consumer revolution, maybe. Consumption expanded across the classes. It began to dominate all of our lives. At some point, we transformed into a consumer society.
The consumer society is different from previous forms of consumption. We have a wider variety of goods, shops and services. We have more pervasive marketing. Everything is commercialised and exchanged. And consumerism has become not just about producing new goods, but has become a cultural phenomenon.
In his classic 1993 book, Land of Desire, historian William Leach says that, quote, "The cardinal features of this culture were acquisition and consumption as the means of achieving happiness, the cult of the new, the democratization of desire, and money value as the predominant measure of all value in society."
Yep.
And historian Peter Stearns defines consumerism as, quote, "a society in which many people formulate their goals in life partly through acquiring goods that they clearly do not need for subsistence or for traditional display."
So today, I want to explore our consumer world, that landscape of desire. What does consumerism mean? Is it even a useful concept? Is the West, are we, shallow? Does consumerism make us ill? Bounded by image, by advertising, by celebrity? Is there any possibility of ethical consumption? Is there?
I feel like the whole present day society is itself brain rot. Like the consumerism society is brain rot itself.
Any way out?
Like the waters of a mighty ocean, people also represent a tremendous force, the understanding of which is of greatest importance to the American way of life. This force is known as consumer power.
Zombie society.
To fully understand the function of outdoor advertising in modern living, it is necessary to keep in mind the day-by-day activities of the people who are reached by this powerful form of advertising media. They work, they play, they study, and most important of all, they buy.
First, we need to look at the history of how consumerism developed.
Let's do it.
What we might have lost, and when and why this change happened.
Good question.
To really understand what our consumer society is.
The zombie society.
Modern consumerism, as we understand it today, began to develop in the city-states of Renaissance Italy in the 15th century. Trade between the Far East, Middle East and Europe increased, merchants became wealthier, and disposable income became more common. Artisans and shopkeepers traded in, owned and collected increasing numbers of household wares like jars, bowls, plates, cutlery and textiles.
Excessive number of those. You know, when I bumped into the whole minimalist thing, bro. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with the minimalist culture. You know what I mean? I bumped into that minimalist stuff as a concept, right? Online, that is. You feel me? Like, I saw how people live there. It's actually anti-consumerism, right? So the least stuff you have, the better. You know what I'm saying? And I started just like, you know, looking beyond the like the name. You know what I'm saying? Like the minimalist shit. Okay, cool. You have less. You know, the least shit you have, the better. But I started to just like reason with it. Like, bro, like literally, it gets easier for you to be able to take care of dishes when you know you only got 2 plates your whole house. You feel what I'm saying? And yes, I get the fact that that's like sustainable maybe if you just like if you live by yourself, because that's, yeah, as a self concept and shit like that, like by yourself, you know what I'm saying? Having two plates and just like 1 fork, 1 spoon, like, you know what I'm saying? And shit, bro, like 3 t-shirts, bro, that you just like rotate every, like, it's gonna force you to just like wash your shit, you know what I'm saying? Like take care of your shit. So it's gonna force you to have like at least some good habits, you know what I'm saying? Some clean habits, because you're not gonna, I mean, come on, bro. After like 2 weeks, after a week, well, depending on how you sweat, how much you sweat, and you know, if you're fat, like smelly individual, shit like that, like you're gonna have to get to washing your t-shirts, you know, every couple days, like every like 2 days or some shit, because like you ain't got no more clean shit to just like rotate. You feel me? That was the beauty, like in minimalism that I caught. You feel me? So yeah.
Like clothes or curtains, carvings and tapestries and art became more elaborate and more widespread. But the new economics of consumption, the newfound wealth of merchants exploring the globe, developed alongside an already existing moral economy in Italy that questioned consumerism's benefits and sought to moderate its excesses.
Yep. What else?
Aristotle, whose works became more widely read during the Renaissance, had argued that the displaying of wealth should be done virtuously. A wealthy man, he said, to be admired, should contribute to public works and communal feasts.
Yep.
Brash, undirected luxury was immoral. It had no social use. For Plato, too.
Yeah, because it has nothing. It does nothing but just like takes from the rest of the world, right? You got all this shit that's just sitting there, and it's just one of you. It's like, what the fuck, bro? Like, share that shit. What are you doing?
Luxury led to laziness, corruption, and an inward drive for ever-increasing selfish desires.
Boy.
The ancient Stoics also rejected the idea of becoming attached to anything material and fleeting. Identifying with and becoming attached to an external world outside of your control would only lead to frustration when those attachments were challenged, perished, or were taken away.
Right.
The ancient Greeks, for the most part, had emphasized an inner, virtuous life. The Christian Church, which of course had a strong presence in Renaissance Italy, adopted the values of these ancient Greek philosophies, and so many in places like Florence, Venice and Milan were skeptical of this new commercial culture. The newly wealthy merchants had to ensure that their possessions were consistent with the conservative sensibilities of the time. In 1497, for example, one friar started a bonfire of vanities in the middle of Florence. Board games, instruments, cosmetics, clothes and tapestries, anything that could tempt one into sin, were all burned as citizens danced around the bonfire. Venetians passed laws trying to regulate luxury, taxing spending at weddings and prohibiting certain dress styles.
Well, that was a step in the right direction.
And tapestries more than a certain length. As commerce thrived across Europe, other European states followed. In England, for example, wearing purple silk and gold was restricted to royals. In London, in 1574, a tailor was sent to prison for wearing, quote, a pair of hose lined with taffety and a shirt edged with silver, contrary to the ordinances. While in much of Asia, the Buddhist tradition, much like the Stoics, rejected the idea of attachment with possessions, with the
Okay. What else, brother?
It was only in the 18th century that these attitudes began to change. As global trade increased, people began collecting new and unique candlesticks, exotic linens and textiles, spices, tankards, bird cages, porcelain, stockings, pipes and soaps. A taste for new foods and drinks, made cheaper and more abundant by the Atlantic slave trade, increased, and consumers became addicted to coffee, tea, chocolate, and especially sugar. Cotton from plants instead of animals, again made cheaper with slave labour, became more affordable, took dyes better, and suddenly clothes became more colourful, more varied, more abundant. All of this coincided with the development of modern marketing, advertising and salesmanship as merchants sought new ways to promote new goods. English pottery maker Josiah Wedgwood, central to the Industrial Revolution, invented the modern salesman in the 18th century. As the historian Neil McKendrick writes, Wedgwood used inertia selling campaigns, product differentiation, market segmentation, detailed market research, embryonic self-service schemes, money back if not satisfied policies, free carriage, giveaway sales promotions, auctions, lotteries, catalogues, advanced credit, 3-tier discount schemes, including major discounts for first orders, and almost every form of advertisement, trade cards, shop signs, letterheads, billheads, newspaper and magazine advertisements, fashion plates and fashion magazines, solicited puffs, organised propaganda campaigns, even false attacks organised to produce the opportunity to publicise the counterattack. Throughout the 19th century, consumerism continued entering the home. In Britain, a new trend, wallpaper, led to sales going through the roof. Art and photography, miniature replicas of statues and ornaments all became cheaper to reproduce and manufacture, and so became more popular. Clocks and watches were suddenly everywhere. Then the glass window was invented. Shop windows.
What the fuck? Only then was the glass window invented? Right.
Glass cabinets and displays created a new relationship between the consumer good and the consumer. Perhaps more than any other medium, the historian J.W. Lundstrom writes, glass democratized desire even as it democratized...
Oh, because they ended up just like window shop. Oh my god. I was watching a video by Illuminati, bro. This nigga was making like really powerful points about like just protecting your gaze, dog. Cause what you see, you know what I'm saying, that could just like produce a whole momentum of energy, you know, towards desire towards something. You know, that's if it piques your interest type shit. The more like you fix your eyes towards some shit, like it'll influence your desire for it, obviously. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's when they, you know, formulated the idea that, you know what, it's just, you know, produce a glass like in between like consumer and whatever they desire, so that, you know, wherever they like within public spaces that is, it may be like passing through the shop like outside and shit like that. But you know what I'm saying, you gotta let their eyes connect with what they missing out on. That's crazy, right? That was kind of genius. I'm not gonna lie, because like look at the result of that today, man. whole bunch of people like desiring some shit that they don't need. They know that too, but it's so like it's been ingrained so hard that they might not know it. Sort of, kind of. I don't know. It's a subconscious like whole phenomenon, I think.
Access to goods. And in the 20th century, DIY, tools, commercial music, radio, cinema, television, technology and gadgets and computers supercharged the consumer revolution.
Right.
McDonald's opened its doors in 1955, credit cards were introduced in 1958, comic books and Hollywood, Microsoft and Apple took over the world. Supermarkets and shopping malls sprang up and governments invested in highways to connect them. In 1946, there were just 8 suburban shopping centres in the US. 14 years later, in 1960, there were almost 4,000.
Oh shit, 4,000?
These new cathedrals of commerce epitomised the shift in culture. Famed architect Victor Gruen designed the largest shopping mall in the world in Detroit in 1952. It had hundreds of stores, private roads, a power plant, a police force, a water system, and was designed as a self-contained city. Gruen's next project in Minnesota was even more ambitious. He designed it so that deliveries, the organising of stock, the wires and pipes were accessed from the back, hidden from view, so that everything appeared on the shelves as if by magic. Gruen believed that these new developments could be the hearts of the new suburban communities that were springing up everywhere, that were in desperate need of a kind of spiritual, communal core. Later in life, though, he became appalled at how they turned out. He wrote that instead of providing the need, place and opportunity for participation in modern community life that the ancient Greek agora, the medieval market and place, and our town squares provided in the past, they become bastard developments. Gruen retired to Vienna, becoming a science fiction writer, commenting on the environmental destruction our new suburban culture was causing. So while consumerism developed over centuries, the post-war consumer revolution, the one we're all a product of and living in really right now, was a fundamental break from the past. Mass consumption became national, international. Advertising pervaded every living room through radio and television and then the internet. Disposable income increased for many. Rock and roll, birth control, and then the swinging 60s made hedonism and the enjoyment of new desires respectable. But if consumerism is so broad, so vague, so far-reaching, what really does a consumer society even mean?
Okay, so we've looked at some history. What about the culture, the psychology, the sociology, the philosophy of consumerism?
There's clearly not one single consumerism though. We consume everything from food to music to essential oils to new package experiences. Is it all just hedonistic? Well, no, clearly not. We consume books and audiobooks and online lectures. We consume healthy foods we don't necessarily enjoy sometimes. We use gadgets like sports watches that we don't necessarily get simple pleasure or enjoyment from.
But consumerism is even more complicated than this. It's not just stuff, it's a cultural activity, a subject, a certain attitude towards the world. We have to remember that going shopping and being a consumer is a historical cultural activity that has values, norms, outlooks. It's done in different ways depending on the person, the place, the historical period. It's not just the act of purchasing and consumption, it's the perspectives, the specific activities that go with it, the marketing and the wider relationships and interactions too.
Consumer groups and cooperatives and political parties and pressure groups and lobbies all developed throughout the 19th century. Consumers organised. There are book genres and discourses about shopping conscientiously. Consumer groups lobby the states for rights and consumer protections. So apart from the obvious, an increase in global trade, the Black Death played a huge role, by the way.
Death.
So many died that the people that survived were better off financially and had more disposable income to go around. Apart from all of this kind of stuff, can we identify any cultural and social and psychological dynamics that might help us understand consumerism today?
Oh no.
I think there are two that provide a good route into the psychology and the sociology. They
How
are
do you know that?
the production of new desires and social mimicry.
Is that where the art of comparing one another came from? Was that the birth of that? Ha! I'm to be your fantasy.
Some objects, some consumer goods, fulfill a simple, natural, biological need. We eat to satiate ourselves. We buy a bed to sleep on, a home to protect us from the elements.
Right.
But we're not just a needs species.
What are we, buddy?
We go beyond our simple needs.
Seriously?
We create new desires, new ways of being in the world. We seem to have a desire for the new. But really understanding what that means, what it could mean, has only developed over the past few hundred years.
Nice.
We can see this shift in what desire means across the 19th century.
Yep.
Sociologist Colin Campbell argues, for example, that Romanticism, that hugely influential pan-European movement that emphasised feelings,
Oh, the Romance era.
sentiments, emotions, novel experiences and adventure and creativity, was an important part of the development of a consumerist
How do
outlook.
you know that though?
Campbell writes that the consumer withdraws from reality as fast as he encounters it, ever casting his daydreams forward in time, attaching them to objects of desire, and then subsequently unhooking them from these objects as and when they are attained and experienced. As modernity developed and we were unshackled from the circularity of traditional life, of the same routines every day, every month, every year, we began to want to collect something new. Experiences. Oscar Wilde satirised this idea of new experiences in his 1891 The Picture of Dorian Gray. Gray exchanges his soul for everlasting youth so that he can live endlessly as a hedonist. Rachel Balby writes that Gray exchanges his
That's a stupid requirement. That's a stupid desire.
moral self for the unbound
Very
liberty
ignorant.
of the new hedonist. There's no limit to the number of personalities he can adopt, to the experiences he can try. The modern world created adventurers, explorers, dandies and flaneurs, moving through the streets, through the countryside, moving through the world just to collate and to understand the new. Already in 1655, philosopher and scientist Robert Boyle had written that while other creatures were content with easily attainable necessaries, humans had a multiplicity of desires and greedy appetites. In 1741's Fable of the Bees, Bernard Mandeville had argued against the received wisdom of Christianity, the ancient Greeks and the Romans, that private vice and selfish individual desire were simply pernicious. Instead, he said, they were socially useful. They created more trade, more commerce, and in the end made everyone better off. Scottish Enlightenment philosopher
Better off in the short term. Look at the long term effect that had. Fast forward right now, watching. Right? Biggest consumer of unnecessary bullshit of all time. Shit, I'm in that conversation too. Why you looking at me weird?
David Hume agreed to an extent, writing that indolent luxury was still pernicious, but that an increase and consumption of all the commodities which serve to the ornament and pleasures of life are advantages to society.
Right.
When Wilde was writing in the 19th century, Paris was becoming an international hotspot for new department stores, placing a universe of exotic goods on display. In his book The Lady's Paradise, author Emile Zola wrote about the allure of the new stores. He called them altars, a miracle, a machine, and that mad desires were driving all the women crazy. Other Parisian...
There we go. There we go. That's when they grabbed the woman by the balls. Well, figuratively, right? They're like, yo, let's target this one right here. And this other one, you know what I'm saying, will follow suit. Because, you know, this other one be chasing this one's tail. So if we know we got this one's mind, that other one is going to follow suit. You know what I'm saying?
And critics talked about a new type of person, the flaneur, the everyday person strolling aimlessly around the Parisian arcades, just taking it all in, experiencing as much as possible. And at the beginning of the 20th century, as Henry Ford popularised a new method of standardised mass production, capitalists and then advertising executives on Madison Avenue wondered how new desires could be maintained, created from thin air. The father of public relations and Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, wrote that mass production is profitable only if its rhythm can be maintained. Business cannot afford to wait until the public asks for its product. It must maintain constant touch through advertising and propaganda to ensure itself the continuous demand which alone will make its costly plans profitable.
Do you think human beings can find their way back to this kind of living? Well, to the living that was pre-this. When people just like cared about their necessities, and once they got that, like, we good, right? We survive and we nice. We don't need all this extra shit. You think it's possible for human beings to go back there? Or it's unnecessary anymore, considering the momentum that's been built for living like this?
Profitable. Freud himself became central to the new advertising industry. Ad men drew on his theories of sexual desire, oral gratification, and the pleasure principle to sell new brands, new products.
Right.
The psychologist and marketer Ernest Dichter famously recommended to his colleagues, don't sell shoes, sell lovely feet. The shift was...
This guy was probably fetishly into feet, maybe.
The consumerism and marketing that
it's only right that I conclude, like, that's the only thing that makes sense.
It was about new fantasies, new lives, becoming a new and different person. It wasn't about the present, it was about the future. The bank Lehman Brothers Paul Mazur wrote that we must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old had been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. Some of these new desires, new dreams, new visions were practical. The washing machine freeing up some of the housewife's time, the automobile, the typewriter, but others were criticised as luxuries, sports cars and endless new fashions. Retail analyst Victor Labau wrote in 1955, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate.
That's good.
The landscape of desire was where production, consumption, marketing, advertising, and the individual met. As the philosopher Jean Baudrillard, who we'll come back to shortly, points out in his classic Consumer Society, heroes of production, colonizers, explorers, founders, industrialists, soon gave way to heroes of consumption, celebrities, gilded princes, and sports stars, notable figures that wore the latest designs and drove the flashiest cars.
The rise of the copycat, man. Let's do it.
For the rest of the continent,
it was only right. It was only natural that it was going to get here. Because now you got to understand, you know, you're not only training the person that's going to be that's gonna, you know, have the deep pockets to consume all the shit that's being invented now. You're also, you know, luring in or training the person that's broke, that's not gonna afford any of this shit. You're also training them to be desirable. You know what I'm saying? So what's gonna happen? The person with the deep pockets, they're gonna desire all this shit. They're gonna go for this shit. It's gonna look attractive. And then person B over here, who's broke, who you're also training to desire some shit, knowing damn well, knowing that they not gonna like afford any of this shit. They're gonna look at person A and be like, God damn, I gotta copy that. I gotta do exactly what they did to get to the point of, you know, being able to have access to all this shit. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
But we don't just consume alone. We
What do
don't
we do?
invent our own desires
What else?
independently. Those figures, those heroes of consumption, and our social life more broadly,
Yep.
provide models for mimicry. We're an inherently social species.
Seriously.
In the old royal courts of Europe, adopting conspicuous styles stood one out from your competitors. Now, celebrities and models and the like set trends, but we all like to be ahead of the pack.
Head of the curve, man.
In 1899, the sociologist Thorstein Veblen coined the term conspicuous consumption
Conspicuous
to describe
consumption.
the upper class phenomenon of buying, displaying and wearing luxury goods to distinguish themselves
Nice.
from their peers.
In
Beautiful.
1950, the economist Harvey Liebenstein adapted the idea of conspicuous consumption. He noted how not only did the wealthy adopt new styles
What else they
to
do?
set themselves apart, but that the middle classes then copied them to try and display social status themselves. He called it the bandwagon effect.
The bandwagon effect.
The Veblen effect, as it's come to be known, means that the acquiring of consumer goods
Oh,
is not
shit.
just about use, utility, beauty, boredom or innovation, but about status. The value of the good is not just determined by its usefulness,
What's it
but by
determined
the
by?
social value of displaying it. But this idea of status is not even simply a surface phenomenon. Being in the know is about having the right knowledge, the right know-how, knowing the direction of the wind and trends. It's all necessary for being accepted in the correct circles, whether that's about class or about being a fashion designer
Beautiful.
or a tech entrepreneur. Even science has fashionable trends to consume. As the sociologist Roberta Sassatelli writes, there is the knowledge, gastronomical or social, that derives from having eaten out, tasted this or that dish, having used a given type of cutlery, and having managed well the phases of the meal, that is tasting, commenting on the dishes, chatting and exchanging information.
This act of social mimicry functions in a strange way, almost as if it's an engine. Often, once the vulgar, lesser, lower classes begin to adopt a certain style, then it no longer distinguishes the upper classes who brought into it as a fashion and used it to distinguish themselves as unique, as special. And so trends keep revolving as new trendsetters turn away from the crowd and adopt new styles.
The sociologist George Simmel wrote that as soon as the lower classes begin to copy their style, thereby crossing the line of the demarcation the upper classes have drawn and destroying the uniformity of their coherence, the upper classes turn away from this style and adopt a new one, which in turn differentiated them from the masses, and thus the game goes merrily on.
Baudrillard argued that in the post-war consumer society, not only is there
What's wrong with your
conspicuous
mic, man? We can't hear
consumption,
you.
but a fantastic conspicuousness. We're everywhere surrounded by styles and images to imitate, new gadgets to employ, and the turnover rate for these new fashions is inexorable. Okay, so consumerism is maybe about creating new desires and social mimicry. But you might be wondering, what's bad about this?
What is bad?
Where's the problem?
I
Where
buy
is it?
new camera equipment, new lights, new microphones and books.
Yep.
I have a bike over here that would be impossible to manufacture in the way that it is just 20 years ago.
Right.
All of these things are desires that have been created. And, well, I watch reviews and things, especially on the internet, and I see what photographers use, etc. So that's the social mimicry. But the point I'm getting at, I guess, is that I find all of this stuff useful. I find the task I use them for, making YouTube videos, meaningful, and I hope you do too. So again, where's the problem?
Where's the problem? Shopping for the problem. Let's do it. Ow, my back. Fuck. Shit, my back hurts, guys.